You have a bone to pick.
I have a big bone to pick with someone. Fell asleep during my town hall meeting recently.
Yeah, that...
Like drooling, snoring.
That is not true. I did not drool or snore.
I think I have the evidence.
You have evidence?
I do have evidence.
Did you really take pictures of it?
I have evidence, but because I'm kind-hearted, they have not gone public. And they shall never see the light of day.
Oh, wow.
Or so we're told.
Well, this interview better go well.
Yeah.
You're telling us.
That's all I can say.
Oh, my.
All right.
Welcome back to the Montclair Pod. I'm Mike.
And I'm Farnoosh. And at the top of the show, that was our school superintendent, Ruth Turner, busting you, Mike, for falling asleep directly in front of her during a recent town hall meeting. I gotta say, that was a great moment in broadcasting, right there in front of us.
Yeah, not one of my finer moments. You know when Trump, goes after a reporter and it's like, you're a disgrace, you're fake news, no one watches you. That was kind of like how I felt at the time, but everything she said was true.
Mm-hmm.
You know? My God, I am fake news. I fell asleep in the town hall.
Let me remind you, you were also sitting next to the mayor. Can't forget that amazing detail. I just wish I had been recording it. When it was happening. I was seated behind you, and I remember I gazed over at you and I was like, are his eyes shut? And I wasn't quick enough to pull out my camera and record you. I just slapped you, I think, right? Or I just gently tapped you on your face.
Thank God for small favors. Although Superintendent Turner did lead me to believe that she may have captured footage of that. And then she's holding it as leverage over me at some point. But the joke's on her because I cannot be shamed. I cannot be publicly shamed, as we all know. I mean, come on.
I'm going to enjoy ridiculing you about this for the rest of our lives.
Oh, nice. Yes. And now everyone in town can too. Thank you so much. Well, after that great moment in my life, we did actually talk about some real stuff, namely the referendum coming up on March 10th that will determine the extent of the cuts coming our way and whether or not we'll have a state monitor. We'll talk magnets, we'll talk staffing, and what Turner will be doing come March 11th, however the vote turns out.
Superintendent Turner isn't our only big guest on the show. We've also got Dave Placek with us. He's the developer in town who owns several properties, including Lackawanna Plaza, which is beginning to creep along.
Yep, we've seen some movement there, and we're going to talk to him about the timeline and so much more, including the side eye he gets from so many people in town. And sometimes it's not so side. Sometimes it's very direct kind of finger pointing kind of stuff.
We also have a bit more from Lonnie Brandon, don't we, Mike?
That's right. We're going to share another story from the former Montclair Parks and Recs director about the civil rights activism he did in college and the federal court case that followed.
Plus, we've got plenty of other news to cover, including a new lawsuit that's trying to stop the March 10th vote.
Here we go again. Is it too cliche to play that Al Pacino quote from Godfather 3?
No. If there was ever an appropriate use of that clip, it is now.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
That's not the only school news. There's a brand new Substack about our schools written by a local dad who's also a contributing editor at New York Magazine.
Montclair really has become a hub for independent media.
Yep, stuff's popping off.
I think, I don't know, can we take a little credit for that?
I mean, we could. We could.
I'm kidding. No.
Let's do that. Let's give ourselves. No, it's you people. It's you. You all, our listeners, are the heroes.
Yeah. And we'll tell you about some major tech updates the town is making, all to the tune of $2.3 million, in part because of a cyber attack that happened a few years ago.
You know, we're going to get to relive our old days at credit.com, Farnoosh.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk a little bit about what to do if you've ever been hacked or ever get one of those data breach letters.
Yeah, it's a story as old as time. What's the point of even having socials anymore?
It makes me sad.
Well, don't get too upset because we've got a new sponsor for our new series, Farnoosh and Mike Get Healthy. We're going to take you inside Skin Splendid in Upper Montclair. They're going to get rid of all of our referendum stress lines.
How about the actual worry? Can they get rid of that?
Not permanently, but I think it's a very nice vibe in there. You and I went over the weekend, very relaxing. We're going to bring you right inside this med spa that has locations both here in town and in New York City. And we're going to talk about Botox, fillers, and facials with them. Oh yeah, we're going to go there.
I got to say, I learned a lot about all that stuff.
But first, Mike, you have an apology to make.
Yeah. Last week, I was writing the show early in the week, and I knew Montclair State had their final game of the regular season on Wednesday, and it was a big game. If they won, they'd be undefeated in the regular season. And so I wrote the script assuming that they'd win. I didn't even write a version that had them losing.
So you jinxed it. Great.
Yeah.
It's your fault. They didn't go undefeated. And we had to scramble to recut the show at the last minute.
Yeah. I want to apologize to you and Bob and to the whole team and wish them the best of luck in their upcoming tournaments.
So, yeah, you better shut up from now on, okay?
Yeah, I'm not saying anything else about that. It's been a tough week all around. We didn't get to go to Italiana by Zod, by the way. That was the other tragedy this week, and that put me in a very bad mood.
I'm really mad with the snow gods. We got shut in, but don't worry, we're going to go. We're going to go another time.
So Italiana by Zod was your birthday dinner. So we didn't get to give you your birthday presents either. That was a bummer.
You got me birthday presents?
Yeah, of course we did.
That's so nice. Thank you for getting me that good chicken gift certificate or something like that.
It's not that. I mean, though, that is a good birthday present, and maybe I'll do that next year.
All right, enough funny business. Let's get going. First up, Superintendent Ruth Turner is back on the show. We went to the district's offices at 22 Valley Road to record this interview.
I like her office. She's got like an old school leather chair. It reminds me of my dad's chair in his office in like 1983. And this chair probably does date back to the 80s. It's like a giant leather monstrosity, like a Ron Burgundy chair, basically.
You can imagine her coming to work with like an attaché and then sitting down in the big leather chair, the mahogany desk. We go on. We told her she needs a Herman Miller Aeron chair, but she needs to get one on the secondary market because they're well over like $1,300 new. And we know there's no money for that.
Yeah, but you can get them for like $300 or $400 or something if they're used. And they're like new because a lot of times companies fill offices with them and never end up hiring the people, or the business folds and they just sell them off on the secondary market. But that's not what we really talked to her about. We spoke to her about the big referendum coming up, the pilot programs, the bond referendum, what scaling back looks like at $3 million plus in cuts versus $10 million plus in cuts.
She was even open to selling the very building we were sitting in.
Yeah, we published a much longer version of that interview on our YouTube channel, almost an hour. And one thing to note is that this interview happened before we found out that someone else was suing to stop the election. It was also before last night's big budget meeting, too.
Yeah, we would have liked to ask her about all of that. And obviously we will next time we speak. But this is 18 minutes of that conversation. Some pretty compelling sections, although head to YouTube for the whole shebang. We start things off with, of course, her going after Michael for falling asleep. It is glorious.
Yay.
Here we go. You have a bone to pick.
I have a big bone to pick with someone. I fell asleep during my town hall meeting recently.
Yeah, that...
Like drooling, snoring.
That is not true. I did not drool or snore.
I think I have the evidence.
You have evidence?
I do have evidence.
Did you really take pictures of it?
I have evidence. But because I'm kind-hearted, they have not gone public. And they shall never see the light of day.
Oh, wow.
Or so we're told.
Well, this interview better go well.
Yeah.
Better go well. That's all I can say.
Oh, my.
All right.
But I do forgive you.
Thank you. I do apologize, but those were good sandwiches and I ate a lot of them. And so
it's the sandwich fault.
100% it's the sandwiches.
No, I think you were bored.
Yeah, I wasn't actually bored. I think those meetings, in all seriousness, even though they're long and sometimes they repeat information, the fact that like people get to ask questions, I mean, sometimes new stuff comes up and that level of community engagement is good.
What do you think is sort of a question or a confusion that many people still have about this referendum? What do you find is something that you really want to communicate to the town, to families ahead of the vote? That's something that we hear. There's a lot of confusion about what's a state monitor, how, so outside of that, what is just something you really want to clarify?
I really, really want to clarify and underscore what's at stake. And I really mean that, come March 10th, regardless, whether folks are for the yes camp or the no camp, I really want us to think about when we cast a vote, just be clearly aware of how we're voting and what the consequences of our votes are. I've been very, very honest and open about every financial information that we have, new developments, anything that, some folks say you've gone public too soon. But again, I promise transparency. I think that sometimes the lack of confusion comes from external forces, lack of a better word, that I think sometimes with good intentions, trying to provide clarity or explain something that was said. Other times, I think with the intention of creating confusion, that mutters the water. That's why we've been very clear in our written communication and during my board presentation, during the town halls. If there's been times where we needed to go back and correct something because we've learned some, new information, we've done that. So I honestly feel confident that if an individual wants clarity, there's multiple ways to go. Unlike some folks, you can watch the town hall, pay attention and not fall asleep. You can read our frequently asked questions. We have, as I said, information on our website. So I think anybody who really wants accurate information, as we say, from the horse's mouth, has an opportunity to do that in multiple means. And that's why I'm pretty confident as we head into March 10th that for me, that information is available for anybody who wants to search it out with the intention of understanding the what's, the hows, and things of that sort.
Well, let's imagine it's March 11th then, and let's game this out a little bit. What happens on March 11th if it's a yes? Let's start with that. What does the next period of time look like from your perspective?
Yeah, so March 10th, if we get a yes, they will be, and we've shared that, a period of time from the yes vote to the time the town is able to assess taxes, collect the taxes, and then send that revenue over to us. So immediately with a yes, we would look into a tax anticipation note that will help us bridge that time period and allow us to continue our operations as a school district. So that would be the first thing that we would do in terms of securing those financial resources for our district. And then still with a yes vote, we still have to deal with roughly a $3.5 million deficit that we will have to close, right? Because we want a balanced budget and we want to think about slowly building up our reserves. That's really, really important to me. And that is something I'm committed to doing because it's essential. God forbid we have an emergency, we need to be able to take care of that. And that's what our reserves will allow us to do. So that would be the course of business that would take place if we were to get a yes vote. Folks really want absolutes. I get the sense, right? In this scenario, that scenario, so many moving targets. We don't know our state aid yet. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that's missing for me to be able to say affirmatively, this is exactly what's happening. I mean, we just went through roughly a $2.8 or so million reduction. We feel it everywhere. And I believe parents feel it everywhere. I can't even imagine a $10 million. It's going to really have a significant impact on us. And even with that, I wholeheartedly believe in our ability to recover. It's going to take some time, but and who's going to feel the most pain of that is our children, right? And that's just a fact. No matter how we spin it, we're going to have to make significant reductions under a $10.5 million, which if we're at that point, that means that we also have been assigned a state monitor. So although we could make recommendations to that individual, the decision-making is not necessarily lies with us. We have an individual to consider and what his or her directives are and in what ways, what their philosophy will be and things of that sort. That's another thing we would have to navigate if we did not get a yes vote on March 10th.
What would you say is at stake for the people who will vote on March 10th who don't have any ties to the school district? They don't have children in the school district any longer, if they ever did, and they feel very removed from this crisis, and they're going to take that sentiment to the polls. What is at stake for them in any of these cases? Yes, no, no.
Yeah, so that's a really good question that I don't think I've been asked. So good job.
I don't fall asleep.
So it's going to be the worst interview.
My response would be to center the children, right? I firmly believe that our children are the future of any community. And I do believe they're also the strength of that community. So sometimes we can say, I don't have grandkids, I don't have children, I don't have any sort of connection or investment in the school district. I think that's not true. I do believe that a robust, healthy school district attracts and retains families. It's better for our economy, right? It's better for our communities. I'm a firm believer in that. So I think we need to think about, if nothing else, what if I did have children in a school district? What would I want for them, right? The children of our community belong to all of us, whether we bear them or, whatever. So that's just my firm belief in that. And I want people to think about that as they vote. I do believe it's unfortunate that we've had to go to special elections to go beyond the 2% cap. As I said, it was not an easy decision whatsoever. And no superintendent wants to do, certainly not in their first couple of months. That's just a fact. It's complicated. It could be very political. It could be very divisive, as we see in our community. So it's not something you wake up and say, "Oh, great, I'm gonna do this. Everything's gonna work out." So it was absolutely the last resort in which I felt as a superintendent was what I can do to ensure that our students, when they come to any of our schools, are getting the level of education they need and deserve.
Do you have a sense of what the cuts would look like at this point, comparing a $3.5 million versus $10 million cut? I mean, what are we talking about? Can you paint a picture? And not just in terms of staffing, but maybe getting rid of some real estate. What's on the table at this point in those two scenarios?
So what I will say is, and I've said this over and over again, we're looking at $3.5 million, which is significant, but worse would be a $10.5 million. Everything would be on the table. Everything would be on the table. Everything it takes to erase that deficit. Although I struggle with the $3.5 million, I'd rather struggle with that and deal with that. So we're going to give a clearer picture, sort of what's at stake. Primarily, I know in the middle you have the yes, no, and no, yes. I can't get to the nitty-gritties, but I'm going to give folks an idea because they all kind of lie in the middle of what's at stake with a $3.5 versus a $10.5 million. And again, I don't want people to be surprised because I've said everything is on the table. As I said, I'm willing to have those of us who are here go on carts. I work anyway if it means that we can, get the resources that we need for our schools. So everything's on the table. We're going to, as I said, outline what some of those things would be at risk, either with a $3 million or $10 million deficit.
What's a cart, just to explain?
A cart, we'll be like on the go, mobile. We'll just have a little, instead of an office and a stationary desk, I mean, we'll get that radical if it needs to be, because again, what I want to avoid at all costs, and I'm not sure if we can, because as many folks know, 75 to 80% of all school districts expenses are staffing. We want to avoid personnel cuts because I sincerely believe, even with the cuts that we instituted in January, our schools are struggling with that. So I'm doing everything I can to avoid reduction in teaching staffing that impacts directly the classrooms, things of that sort. Under $10 million, I'm not sure that could be avoided, but that is what my thought is. Protect, as much of the classroom and schools as possible before having to hit there.
Any preliminary results on the family survey, the survey that you asked for families to take to list their priorities for the 2026-2027 budget? Are there any themes that are recurring, any patterns you're seeing in what parents are prioritizing?
Yeah, I feel like it greatly aligns with my thinking and value, in the sense that the importance of protecting core instruction, making sure that all our students have what they need academically to succeed. It aligned with that. It wasn't anything really surprising. I think that families want their students, their children, to get a good education and to have a well-rounded education.
In terms of the forensic audit that's scheduled for this summer, what is the difference between the audit that you're going through right now and the forensic audit? And I ask that in the context of statements that you've made, there's no missing money, right? Which means nobody stole cash, I assume, right? There's no hole in a bank account in terms of that. But, we don't know about the bidding process. We don't know about others, any self-dealing potentially, or, why was our baseball field so expensive and they decided to put turf in the outfield? Things like that people talk about.
Yeah, I think the bond referendum, I'm not concerned about. And then we also have a company that's working with us to ensure that process is followed. So I don't really have concerns about the bond referendum directly. To your point, I'm just saying I don't. I think that's been, from our perspective, there's a process that the state has set for bidding. You can't go around that. But to your point, we did not find any money missing. I would anticipate, because I think it would alert us, our auditors also perhaps did not find any money missing. The individual that was working with us from the state in reviewing all the financial records didn't find any money missing. So the forensic audit will be a deeper dive than year of the end independent audit. So again, we still have to develop that scope, because it could be a rabbit hole. You can add and add everything to it. We can't. Number one, the expense will grow. So we have to be very clear around the areas in which we don't have a clear answer, or even our independent auditors don't, to your point, like looking into our vendors, looking into the process to ensure that every vendor outside of referendum, that process was followed through, to see, those kind of things I would say we need to have as part of the scope in the forensic audit, aside from all the financial normal stuff that they're going to look for. But we are working with experts and legal counsel to think about what would that scope of that forensic audit be, considering that we're all kind of familiar with where were some of the issues with previous administration and how the business office conducted itself.
Let's talk about structural challenges. We have a new governor, Mikey Sherrill. What is something you would love to get a minute with her to communicate with regards to that 2% cap from the state, and how arguably that is like starving school districts, including Montclair?
Yeah, I think I've been very vocal about the need to talk to our elected officials, including, our governor, about rethinking, re-examining, reimagining how schools are funded in New Jersey, because again, that 2% cap, when we know that inflation, right away, our staff salary alone increases by more than 2%. And we gave everybody the record of information. Again, healthcare about 12%, 7% for transportation. So how do we keep up? Again, it requires us to tax and cut. And I think that's not good for not only our students, but that's also not good for the residents of New Jersey. And we have to be courageous enough to say, let's look at this again. I am optimistic with our new commissioner coming in, learning or getting information about some of the work that she did in her previous role, that perhaps this would be something that the administration would consider. Just go around, again, working with my superintendent colleagues to have those discussions and say, hey, we're all feeling this. How do we collectively begin to ask those questions of Trenton and say, here's where schools need support. What can be done differently is certainly something that we're talking about and moving in that direction. And I also ask our community to also write a letter, make a phone call to your elected officials and say, hey, we'd like to learn more about how these schools are funded. What are your thoughts about that? Here's what we would like to see happen. Would be great.
There's obviously already been cuts to the magnet system, and a lot of people think...
No, there haven't been cuts to the magnet system.
Well, technology teachers at the technology school and things like that.
No, there hasn't.
Well, my daughter goes to Watchung. They don't have a tech teacher anymore. And, it just feels like, and this is, again, just anecdotal. We haven't done a town-wide survey, but there's sentiment that the magnetization of our schools is eroding and has already started to erode.
Yeah.
I disagree. I disagree greatly with that. In the sense that, and again, I look in these areas, I was very clear in the process of our cuts, sharing it with our administration to say, we value the magnet and we want to protect that. At no point did I feel like any of those cuts was jeopardizing that. So again, we can certainly revisit it, but I would disagree to say that it's eroding. I don't see any evidence of that.
And I don't think it's necessarily eroding over the last year or anything like that as a result. But when you look at what the magnet schools were when they began, there was a ton of federal money that was pumped into the district. There were several positions just to develop the curriculum.
Makes
sense.
Okay.
All sorts of stuff.
We were blue ribbon, for years, right?
It was serious.
We will be blue ribbon again.
And so I think what people are saying is like, yes, it's nice to call these magnet systems. It's nice that they can take a little special extra class in this or that or the other thing. But are they really like super special? Are they enough? Because back then, the busing, initially it was just forced busing. People went nuts. A lot of people pulled their kids out of the school district. Then they came up with a magnet system and it was like, oh man, like Nishawayne does this and Bradford does this and all of these special things, that over time, for the reasons that you've
and I'm sure as financial resources begin to shrink, which happens everywhere, your resources are limited. I can see that.
So the question is like, is there going to be a way, I think, to
revitalize that?
Maybe rethink the way it works, like writ large. I don't know. Has that been something that you've talked about or that teachers have brought to you in any way, shape, or form?
No, I think it's because all of us have been, so concerned about. I mean, it's to the point where I just want people to understand, like, the urgency of it is like a staff gets paid twice a month, and everything leading up to that it worries me, right? That's how tight our cash flow is. So when you're in a position like that, it's very difficult, right? Your immediate thing is, we need to solve this. What can we do to make sure? I'm always been very honest to say now, honestly, I'm at a point where it has to be beyond that. Because again, we've done all that we can possibly do at this point.
Another great conversation with Ruth Turner, even the part where she dressed me down. She's really good at that. I felt it.
Yeah, she's good at many things, I got to say.
Yeah. She's good at holding eye contact when she's talking seriously to you. You know what I mean? Like, it was hard to look. I met her gaze and I was like, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, being the superintendent in Montclair, it's not for the faint of heart. So remember, head over to our YouTube channel, just search for Montclair Pod on YouTube, or just go to the link in our show notes and listen to the extended interview.
I'm really glad we asked her about the pilots, because that was a big part of our next conversation with local developer Dave Placek. Superintendent Turner said she thinks the schools should be entitled to a portion of those payment in lieu of taxes money that the developers pay. We asked Placek what he thought about that.
Now, if you remember, when we launched the Montclair Pod, our first episode was called What the Lackawanna? At the time, the building had been largely dormant for years. Pathmark, the supermarket, was long gone. The redevelopment plan felt theoretical. Today, though, the space feels different. There's been some movement there. Small retail stalls line the freight hall. Pickleball echoes through the brick corridors. Weekend markets bring families back. And yet, the larger redevelopment plan, up to 300 apartments, a full-service supermarket, and new commercial space still hasn't broken ground. For Montclair, what's at stake is more than a building. It's long-promised housing, a grocery store that hasn't existed here in more than a decade, and potentially millions of dollars a year in revenue for the town. For its developer, Dave Placek, it's personal. So we sat down with him again to catch up. We begin with the criticism. Take a listen.
There's a lot of them. There's the easy ones. I'm a bad guy. We all subjective, right? I don't think I'm a bad guy, but maybe I rubbed someone the wrong way once or twice. I don't know.
Dave Placek is managing partner at BDP Holdings, and he's behind the current plan to redevelop Lackawanna Plaza, the 8-acre site on Bloomfield Avenue that cycled through redevelopment efforts for more than a decade. In 2023, the township approved a redevelopment plan allowing up to 300 apartments, a supermarket between 30 and 50,000 square feet, and significant commercial space. But approval of a plan is not the same thing as execution. The town was supposed to vote on a financial agreement last night, but decided to reconvene on March 17th. When we asked Placek where the project stands now, he reached for a sports analogy.
We're maybe at the 50-yard line.
Halfway, not stalled, not finished. At the center of the debate is something that sounds technical, but carries real financial implications for Montclair. A pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. Under Montclair's traditional property tax system, revenue from a development is divided among the township, the county, and the school district. Under a pilot agreement, the formula shifts, and the township keeps the vast majority of the revenue. Placek explains it this way.
The financial agreement provides the developer and the project with a pilot. It's a different process to determine what that payment is for the property versus going through the traditional ad valorem tax system where you have an assessment and you pay a millage rate. The pilot works differently. It's generally a percentage of revenue. So I think in Montclair, about a quarter of the tax bill goes to the township. Under a pilot, 95% of the pilot revenue goes to the township, 5% goes to the county. And it's a big increase in revenue for the municipality, and Montclair needs tax revenue.
Right now, the site generates about $100,000 annually for the township under the existing tax structure. Placek shared with us that if Lackawanna does get redeveloped, The site will generate tens of millions of dollars under a 30-year pilot structure, which is based on a set percentage of revenue the project generates.
And for our town, which is managing rising costs and structural budget pressures, that projected revenue is part of the argument for moving forward. Although whether any of that revenue ultimately supports the school district is not the developer's call.
I'm not opposed to having pilot revenue go to the schools. The developer has no decision in that whatsoever. That's a policy decision that needs to be made by the council.
Another recurring question, the supermarket. Montclair has not had a full-service grocery store in this part of town, the 4th Ward, since Pathmark closed more than a decade ago. Placek says a grocer is secured, but confidentiality limits what he can disclose.
I can't say much about the grocer other than it's going to be a full-service supermarket. It is going to have fresh produce, fresh meat, all the things you expect from a supermarket.
In the meantime, the building's been reactivated. Last summer, Placek reopened the space with several small shops operating on short-term leases.
A lot's happened in the last year. So we reopened Lackawanna in June of 2025 with 23 small businesses from the surrounding community.
He says the smaller retail footprints were designed to lower the barrier to entry in a town where storefront rents can exceed $100 per square foot.
A lot of them in Montclair that had been priced out of Montclair or just didn't have the resources to ever open in Montclair because it's very expensive to open a business anywhere.
Not every Lackawanna tenant has remained, though. Pineapple Express closed earlier this year.
I think there were a lot of circumstances that led to the closing of Pineapple Express, and happy to say that we have been inundated with requests to backfill that space. I stopped counting after 50.
Also gone, free parking. Now you have to pay to park. And that's created some tension.
The problem prior to charging for parking was there was never any available parking. And none of those people parking were going into Lackawanna or Pineapple Express. They were going up to any of the other destinations in Montclair because it was the only place in Montclair you could park for free.
That said, Placek acknowledges the backlash.
Parking's tough. I take it on the chin every time. It's a bit of a sensitive subject for me.
Beyond zoning approvals and parking meters, the Lackawanna debate has always been about something harder to measure, change. Placek says he understands the nostalgia that's attached to the site.
I was not born in Montclair. I'm a Southern California native. I talk to my mom all the time, and she's telling me about all the landmarks in Mission Viejo, California, where I grew up, that have been changed. Over time, things change, and change is incredibly hard, right? As the environment changes, you feel sad because the nostalgia of those good days that you remember are gone. And I can wholeheartedly relate to that.
So that was Dave Placek. You can watch a longer version of that interview on YouTube as well. Just head over and please subscribe to the channel too. It'll be interesting to find out how the town decides to vote on the pilot plan. That vote is on St. Patrick's Day of all days. And the hardest thing we asked him, funny enough, was when will this redevelopment be done?
Yeah. And he says, I have no idea. And he was honest, although, you know, considering that it does take time for things to get decided upon in this town. I mean, that pilot vote was supposed to be figured out last night, got kicked to the 17th. Although if you're just talking construction, Placek thinks maybe 3 to 4 years from final approval to completion. He also thinks the schools should get a piece of that pilot tax revenue. But if you remember, when Stephen Marks, the town manager, was on, he made the point that the school budget is set by the Board of Ed and the district, and the town simply collects the money. So if the district were to get some of the pilot money, would that just offset the other tax collection?
Yeah, I mean, by this logic, if the schools aren't getting a piece of that pilot money, then our town taxes should go down. And we're paying these taxes one way or another. Either they're school taxes or town taxes. But it is kind of strange that these pilots fall out of the regular tax process. Why is that? We're going to do some homework on that and get back to you. But this pilot thing goes back all the way to the 1960s.
All right. So that's your homework for the week, Mike. I want a TED Talk on pilot programs next Thursday.
Yes, Mr. Robbie.
Mike! Get help!
Time now for our latest installment of Farnoosh and Might Get Healthy, where we partner with a local health-forward business in town and tell you all about it. And this week, Skin Splendid, a med spa in Upper Montclair, is our sponsor. We went together, but Mike, you kind of chickened out.
That's right. Nurse Christine Adams, who goes by Nurse Christy, the owner, very generously offered to assess my skin. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and let Farnoosh use up all of the time. I'll just hold your purse and the camera. I was holding the camera. I was doing more than just purse holding.
Yes, you were. Yes. You were very helpful production-wise. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I learned a lot. And honestly, after meeting her and hearing her approach to aesthetic medicine, I'm going to be very honest with you. I think Botox might be in my future. So I'm going to start with this. I've never had any work done. Surprise. Facials, yes. Appeal here and there, sure. Sunscreen as often as I can remember, but injectables, no. And part of my reasoning is philosophical. I genuinely do want to age naturally. I don't want to chase being 32 forever. I want to look like myself. But the tension is that I also want to feel confident. I'm on camera, I host events, I interview people for a living, and my face is part of my job. And sometimes those two concepts of wanting to age gracefully and feeling polished, I feel that can feel at odds. And I'm going to be honest about something else, Mike. I've been turned off by Botox and fillers for years because you watch shows like The Real Housewives, you go and watch like the Oscars, the red carpets, you see celebrities. And these faces, they look tight, they look frozen. You're like, who are these people? And you're like, they're wealthy, they're connected. If they can't find good injectors, where does that leave everybody else? So for this installment of Farnoosh and Might Get Healthy, I decided to confront my own assumptions. I sat down with Nurse Christy, a board-certified adult care nurse practitioner and the founder of Skin Splendid here in Montclair, with a location in New York City, to understand how she approaches aesthetics differently, what her signature sprinkle tox actually means, why she uses ultrasound as part of her safety process, and how she thinks about skin health not as vanity, but as healthcare. Take a listen.
Botox 101 first. You cannot spot treat with Botox. It's not like an eraser. So did you know that? Like if you had a wrinkle here, you can't just say, oh, just erase that wrinkle.
Welcome to my very first skin evaluation. It did not begin with a needle, but with a lesson. I sat down in Nurse Christy's chair at Skin Splendid at Upper Montclair, ready for my close-up.
So I'm going to give you the mirror. Okay. Tell me, what do you see when you look in the mirror? What do you look at?
I was honest and started with what I like.
I like my cheekbones. Okay. I like my eyes.
Okay.
I like my eyebrows. But I think as I've gotten older, I notice that it's harder and harder to keep the jawline lined. Yeah. If you will. And also I noticed a little bit of wrinkling here.
But instead of saying, let's fill it, Christy said something that surprised me.
So as we age, we lose bone, muscle, and fat. So our skull is a bone, right? So you lose this temporal bone, gets smaller. This jawline gets smaller too. So as it gets smaller, your skin doesn't get smaller, but your skin loses its buoyancy. It loses elastin and collagen. A lot of providers will automatically just put filler in these lines because they're like, well, let's fill it up. But your face isn't like a balloon to fill up. So we start with Botox. And what we do, we put Botox in the muscles that pull down and in, because Botox is all about balancing. I want to kind of lift you up and out.
And sometimes before she injects anything, Nurse Christy does something you don't see everywhere. She uses an ultrasound machine.
We basically use it as almost like a camera to look underneath the skin and to try to help us assess where maybe old filler is, if something's bothering someone, or assess the vessels before we do injections to make sure it's safe and the skin looks healthy.
That precision and medical rigor is part of her larger philosophy. Nurse Christy opened Skin Splendid in 2021. The list of services ranges from facials to microneedling, lasers, Botox, fillers, and more. But she says she built this med spa differently on purpose. Her team approaches treatments like moving up a ladder, where they start with the least invasive procedure first and move up from there, but only if needed.
It's very patient-centric. When you come to see us, we're very pro-aging. We don't like to say we're anti-aging or anything like that. So we focus on the patient, we focus on what you want, we focus on your anatomy. When you come in, we look at you, we assess you, we give you different options, and then we, take the journey with you.
One of Skin Splendid's more popular and signature techniques is called sprinkle tox. Think Botox, but done very gracefully, where she focuses on 4 areas of the face: the shape of the eyebrow, the heaviness of the eyelid, the jawline, and chin.
So when I'm assessing a face, I always say I don't do Botox for the wrinkle, I do it for the lift. When I used to get Botox a traditional way, even in pictures, my kids can see pictures from 10 years ago, they're like, why do you look angry? Because I had Botox in different muscles in my face. So I actually put Botox in muscles that pull down and in. So instead of making yourself frozen, you kind of lift yourself up and out.
The more we talked, the more I realized this isn't just about lines and jaw lines. It's about how you feel walking into a room, about confidence. And Nurse Christy says she sees that shift all the time.
We have patients that come to us and they're like, I feel so good now about myself that I interviewed and I got a job that I wanted to get, and I didn't have the confidence to even interview for this place, and you guys helped me do that. So it really can be life-changing. Or something small that's been bothering someone for years, and they're like, I want to change this. I didn't want to waste time or effort on myself because I've been taking care of my kids or I've been taking care of my parents. And it's really important to take care of yourself. I always say, you put your oxygen mask on first.
That idea that skin health can be part of overall health is central to her approach. And it's also a family one. What began as a solo practice evolved into a mother-daughter business rooted here in Montclair. Her eldest daughter is also a nurse on staff, and her younger daughter manages operations.
Which kind of just evolved into this mother-daughter business that we had not intended for originally. So it's just amazing.
And that was our trip to Skin Splendid. I'm going to go back for that sprinkle tox, Mike. And I got to say, I consulted with some friends who have visited Nurse Christy for various treatments, and they swear by her magic touch. So I'm really excited to get my jawline back. And you know what? Call me vain. I'm okay with it.
I actually learned a lot from Nurse Christy, too. Botox takes 2 weeks to show its results, for example. It's not instant. If you have an event tomorrow, it's too late. The results develop gradually over about 14 days. Too much Botox often isn't the problem. Too little can look worse.
Skin Splendid, by the way, is located at 1 Bellevue Plaza, Suite 5, adjacent to the parking area. Go to skinsplendid.com for more information, and you can follow them on Instagram at Skin Splendid. You can also follow Nurse Christy at Nurse Christy NYC on Instagram. So now let's listen to a little bit more of our conversation with Lonnie Brandon. We played a bit of that last week, shared his troubling experience with the famed Montclair football coach Clary Anderson. Go back and listen to that if you haven't already, or watch it on YouTube. And now we're going to hear another story from him.
Yeah, he's like a fountain of wisdom from an amazing time. He was going to Wagner College in Staten Island at the time, and he and some other African-American students were in a group called Black Concern, which I think we can all agree is in and of itself badass. That's like a very good name for a student group.
They should come back together and make a podcast. Someone would sponsor that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Black Concern. It's a great name for a podcast. Anyway, they were advocating for a more welcoming and inclusive environment, and buildings were occupied as a result. And there were other student groups involved too. There were expulsions, and ultimately there was a federal case. So check this out. Here's Lonnie Brandon.
I was very motivated when I went to Wagner because there were about 20 Black students that were upperclassmen when I went there in September 1968. And in my class, there were, thinking maybe 60 African-American students. So there was a lot of backlash from some of the white students who were on campus at that time because they felt like we were invading their lily white campus. We had all kinds of fights and all kinds of stuff going on because we weren't going to be pushed around, and most of the guys that were there, we were athletes, football players, basketball players, strong young men. We weren't going to be bullied and pushed around. So we had to deal with that kind of environment. But I get up to Wagner every once in a while now. In fact, a year ago I was there and I talked to one of the history classes that was focused on civil rights. And they asked me to come up and talk about my experiences at Wagner and what we did, because 27 of us got expelled from Wagner while we were there for demonstrating. We eventually got back in school. We had to go to a federal appeals court in Brooklyn to get back into school.
What was the demonstration about? Can you take us through some of the details of that story?
Sure. Basically, what we were looking for, and I say we, I'm talking about the African American students. We had an organization called Black Concern, and we had issued a list of demands we presented to the administration. We wanted increased Black student enrollment. We wanted African American studies, more financial aid for the increased enrollment, and a couple other things. We presented these demands to the administration, and we tried to get meetings to discuss the items that we thought were relevant. And they didn't really want to meet with us, or they refused to meet with us. So at some point, we decided that we were going to take over the main administration building on campus, because at that time, they had what they called College Day, where they brought all of the prospective students up to introduce them to the school. So we decided that we would go into the main administration building and take that over so that we would be in there during College Day. So at that point, the administration decided that we can't have these folks occupying a building on Saturday. We went in there on a Tuesday night, and we ended up staying in there about 2 or 3 days, and we did a lot of telephone conversations with the administration, negotiating. So on Thursday night, we decided that we would come out because they agreed to most of the things that we had on our list of demands. So we vacated the building. And that Saturday, the SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society, which was all white, they decided that they were going to support us and our demands. That Saturday during College Day, they interrupted a lot of the activities that they had, scheduled for new students and their parents. And we went back to school on Monday, and they reneged on a lot of the things that we had agreed on. They says, oh, no, you guys, you didn't negotiate in good faith, and, that wasn't us.
It was the well-meaning white kids.
Yeah. So they said, okay, so we're going to suspend you. So we went to the dean's office because we had been trying to get a hold of the president, who was out of the country. Wagner had a campus in Bregenz, Austria, and he had been over in Austria. We wanted to have an audience with him to discuss the fact that, we had agreed to a lot of things, and then they reneged on them and whole 9 yards. So we went to the dean of the college. We went to his office, and we sat in there. There were 27 of us. We just sat there, and he sat there with us, and we talked and made small talk, really, because we didn't negotiate with him at all. But the dean of students came by and decided that we were holding him against his will. He gave us an ultimatum, and he told us that we needed to release him, and we're like, we're not holding him. He gave us a deadline for releasing, quote unquote, the dean. And when he did not get up and go out into the hallway to tell him that we weren't holding him there, the dean of students expelled us right there on the spot. He says, okay, all 27 of you that are in that room, you're no longer students here. So it was a weird time, because that was the same time where those students were shot at Kent State University in Ohio. That was the same semester. So a lot of schools terminated that spring semester very early because of all of the unrest that was going on nationally. But we got expelled, and then we spent the whole summer following that, going back and forth to court in Brooklyn and Staten Island and all over the place, trying to get back into school. And we ended up getting readmitted. We had some NAACP lawyers who donated their services, and they came to our aid.
Wow, that is just incredible. We're living in a time now where there's a ton of civil unrest, lots of different types of protesting. Obviously, we just had everything that happened in Minnesota. Do you have a message for young people today based on what you lived through in terms of either what they're doing tactically or how they're thinking about just the world?
Yeah, I just wish that the young people of today had the desire and the motivation that we had back in the 60s and the 70s about challenging the status quo and not accepting things that they accept today. I can't go back, but I just wish I was 21 or 22 years old and had an opportunity to address some of the things that are on the social calendar now.
Lonnie Brandon, ladies and gentlemen, the man has stories for days.
He really does. That expulsion story really has some plot twists and turns.
Yeah, I can't believe the white liberal student group, Students for a Democratic Society, allegedly destroyed Black Concern's deal with the administration. That shocked me.
Who knows? They might remember it differently. We'll see if we can track down any of them.
I'm sure there's plenty of nuance like there is with everything, but it's kind of on brand. Like, can you just imagine after the occupation of that building, Black Concern and the administration come to some agreeable terms, and then along come the Students for a Democratic Society. Fear not, Black Concern. We're here to help.
I'm sure they meant well.
Yeah, let's hope so. Anyway, let's get into some news.
Folks, there's lots more school news to cover, so we're going to try and rapid fire this for you, okay?
Yeah, because we're concerned for you. Too much school news can trigger seizures or shock, or in the very least, gastroenteritis.
Please consult your doctor. or grab the Tums. Here we go. There's a new lawsuit. We had the pleasure, although I'm not sure if that's the right word, of breaking this on Instagram and on our website Friday evening, February 20th, and that post popped. Local activist and frequent user of our court system, David Herron, filed a lawsuit last week to stop the March 10th referendum. This was his second attempt to stop the referendum. He actually filed a suit back in the fall as well, although it never made it to a hearing. Didn't matter, of course, because a different lawsuit beat him to it. And remember, that election got scuffled. In his latest lawsuit, Herron has two reasons for wanting to block the special election. Why don't you explain it, though, Mike? Because I'm not sure I can.
Sure. Take a break. All right. First of all, Herron accuses the district of engaging in impermissible electioneering, saying that Superintendent Turner has been encouraging a yes vote in letters to the editor, and in meetings. And the lawsuit also says that the questions remain confusing and ambiguous. You feeling better yet?
Yeah, I'll continue. So the suit names the Essex County Board of Election as well. And by the way, we shared Ruth Turner's op-ed on our homepage last week, and she laid out very plainly what's at stake for all parties, from taxpayers to students to staff, depending on how we vote on March 10th. I'm very curious to learn what a judge will make of that.
But over the years, it seems that based on online searches, Herron has filed 15 to 20 complaints that fall into three categories: OPRA, or Open Public Records Act complaints, Board of Education petitions, and procedural challenges to redevelopment projects. He's a very busy man.
Yes, he is. We got to meet this David Herron, and we need to get him a better picture. Everyone is using the same photo of him from God knows when. Mr. Herron, let us do your new headshot.
Yes, we'll give you several options, including the reflection one. Do you remember that one from elementary school, where like one is looking straight ahead and one is looking? I always opted for the reflection. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I love that. My favorite are those glamour shots from Napoleon Dynamite, though.
Yeah, glamour shots by Deb.
Vote for Pedro.
Vote for Pedro.
This is not rapid fire enough, though, okay? Let's keep it going. A quick shout out to a new independent media voice covering our schools, local dad and contributing editor at New York Magazine. Andrew Rice has a new Substack, which you can find at mymontclaireducation.substack.com.
Yep, his first article is out, and it's called Part 1, What's the Worst That Could Happen? That's a good headline, right?
Yeah.
This first article is all about other towns where similar things have happened. He says in the article that he's voting yes on the referendum questions, meaning that he wants to raise taxes and avoid the biggest cuts. But he says he's not writing these pieces to convince you to do the same. He just wants people to be informed.
Another sentiment we can relate to. Open invitation to join the pod, Mr. Rice. Okay, next up, the town needs new computers.
What are we talking here? Chromebooks, laptops? I got an old MacBook Air that I can sell them.
No, I'm afraid it's a bit more specialized than that. The town needs $2.3 million in tech upgrades. This is according to a story in the Montclair Local by Matt Kadosh, who's been on the pod before.
Yes, according to Matt's article, quote, after its computer network, including the 911 systems, failed multiple times over 6 months, Montclair Township is replacing 33 back-end devices in an approximately $2.3 million system-wide upgrade, the township manager said. Of the town's 33 servers, switches, and firewalls, 28 were, quote, past their useful life or compromised, township manager Stephen Marks told the town council last week.
The $2.3 million contract went to Millennium Communications Group, Inc. of East Hanover. They evidently do a lot of this kind of work for other municipalities in New Jersey, according to their website, where they display logos from Bergen, Hunterdon, and Passaic counties, as well as the great state of New Jersey itself.
And let's not forget that the town has had to deal with a couple of big data breaches in the last few years alone. The summer of 2023, there was a ransomware attack in town, and the town's insurer had to pay the thieves $450,000 to get a treasure trove of data back, though evidently not all of the data was recovered. People were getting data breach notifications in 2024 and 2025. I think I got one. I get so many of those. Farnoosh, how many times have you gone on TV and talked about what to do when you get caught up in a data breach?
I mean, just recently, because it's tax season and this is a high season for fraud and getting kind of the phishing scams and all of that. I just had to close a bank account a few months ago because someone got a hold of my routing number, and I'm still reeling from the repercussions of that.
Last but not least, we have another bit of development drama, this time over a proposed swimming school in Upper Montclair next to the fire department and across the street from St. James Church on Valley Road.
Yep. SwimQuest, which has locations in Livingston, Milburn, and Whippany, wants to create a one-story, 7,700 square foot aquatic school on the lot where a now vacant Chase Bank is. The project is being developed in partnership with Greenwood Development, whose owner is David Genova, also the owner of the Wellmont.
They're asking for a few variances. Normally, the lot would require 39 parking spaces, but they only want to have 11. The SwimQuest in Milburn only has 11 spaces, and Genova told the Montclair Local that it works well there.
But the Upper Montclair Business Association has expressed concerns, and here's their statement. Quote, given the projected class sizes, overlapping arrival and departure times, and the constrained vehicular access points serving the Upper Montclair Plaza, a professional traffic and circulation study appears essential to properly evaluate congestion, pedestrian safety, and roadway impacts on Valley Road and Bellevue Avenue and within the parking lot. And yeah, that sounds reasonable to me, Mike, and you live around there. And I will say, as a parent who has taken her kids to swim school around town, we used to go to Safe Splash in Verona, which is a huge parking lot, a very different environment to where they're proposing to build this here in Upper Montclair. You know, I will say that this project, it sounds very ambitious in terms of keeping traffic running smoothly. Traffic is very congested in this area, and I fear it may cause a lot of slowdown in addition to other threats. People don't just drop off their kids to swim school. It's a whole thing. You park, you go inside to undress your kid, you then wait and sit around for them to finish, and then you dress them, and then, it's a whole thing. And 11 parking spaces is scarce. If you're looking to teach more than a dozen kids every hour, I think it would be important to have a study at the minimum to make sure that this is a safe thing to do and a workable thing to do. And I get, the grievances from the surrounding businesses. Let's do the due diligence.
Yeah.
Why are we rushing to do this?
We'll link to both of those stories in our show notes. Are we done yet?
Almost. Time for the one big thing. You go first. What are you up to this weekend?
I'm not sure. We were supposed to go to Vermont this weekend, but we're not. So I'm going to be sticking around. I might end up going to see Hamlet. And I saw it last weekend after we played a show at Luna Stage. Luna Stage is doing Hamlet. And I was thinking about going and seeing it again with my wife and child because I don't think my child has ever seen Hamlet.
Oh.
And it was a really, really great production. And it was crazy because there were like 4 or 5 actors and they were playing like 16 parts and they were just changing outfits so quickly.
Wow.
And it was really fun. And it was in the round also. So everybody was seated around the stage. It was just a nice, really, really great production. They were pros. What about you? What are you doing?
We are going to go, my daughter and I, for a mother-daughter weekend with another number of mother-daughters, a couple other mother-daughters to Connecticut. So we are all mother-daughters from Brooklyn. The 3 moms, we all got pregnant at the same time. We all had girls. The girls grew up together. We were actually supposed to get together last weekend, but the blizzard threw a wrench into our plans. And so we're going to do it this weekend. So
nice.
Yeah.
What are you doing in Connecticut?
One of the moms has a house there. And we're just going to roast marshmallows and whatever and do girly things.
Cool. Well, have fun.
Thanks.
All right. That's it. We're done. Are we done?
That's our show. Next week. Do you want to tease next week?
Yeah. Next week, we're doing transportation.
Yeah.
We're going to be speaking with local resident David Folkenflik, who you may know from NPR. He shares a particularly tragic and important story about traffic safety in Montclair, very generously shares his perspective.
And we have a sit-down interview with our new Complete Streets director, Jacob Neiman. We'll talk about his initiatives and how he's thinking about traffic safety here in town.
Until then,
we'll see you in town.
Okay. There's as we speak, there's 4 feet of snow on my driveway apron. I know. I'm going off script here, but I'm having trouble. Vanessa's out there right now shoveling while we're recording.
You shouldn't let her do that.
What am I going to do?
What kind of husband are you?
I can leave right now.
What kind of husband are you?
Yeah, really. Okay.
Where were we?